Welcome to another episode of Victoria's Lounge from Zeneria Portico. Now, when you hear the word engineer, what comes to mind? Is it an older gentleman with a pocket protector? Or the individual who operates a train? Or maybe it's a trendy young man in a hoodie? Well, let me ask you this. Did a woman come to mind at all? Well, the fact is, when it comes to careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or also known as STEM, women don't feature very much. And why is that? Well, I have a panel of women in STEM who are here to talk about their experiences, some of the challenges that they go through, but also why a career in STEM is so rewarding. Let's meet them now. Dr. Charity Wayua is a research manager at IBM Research Africa, leading the public sector team that develops commercially viable technologies to help governments provide services to citizens. Dr. Chao Mbogo heads the Computer Science Department at Kenya Methodist University, where she's also a researcher and lecturer. Hilda Muthoni handles IBM's Data Science and Business Analytics portfolio as a technical specialist covering Central, East, and West Africa. All right, so I'm sure when people hear the term STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, you're not thinking this. At least top of mind when you think of engineers or people in technology, but there are women in STEM, and that's why we're having this conversation. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Let's begin at how you got into STEM, and was it something that was on your radar, something that you knew you wanted to get into, and if not, who inspired you? Let's begin with you, Chao.
So I was actually not planning to be a computer scientist when I was when I was in primary school and high school. I loved maths though, so I was quite good at maths, and my first degree was in maths and computer science, and so I actually chose that more for the maths than the computer science. And because I didn't grow up with computers, my use of computers was limited to the cyber cafe, and my first continuous interaction in computers was actually at first year. And it is at that point that I discovered programming, and then I fell in love with it, and that was really the time I was introduced to computer science, and it became a passion, and I pursued it through postgrad to PhD level.
It's amazing that your interaction came a bit later on when you're in university, and still, look, here you are. I think the notion is you have to be exposed early, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and you're thinking, this is what I want to do. Was that the case for you, Charity?
So I enjoyed sciences, and I had a really great teacher in chemistry for high school. And I think she kind of picked my interest, even though I didn't really have a clear idea of, what can you do with chemistry. But it was just interesting. She brought it to life, developed an interest in me, and so that made me pursue a degree in chemistry. And then following that, I think just additional mentors. When I attended my undergraduate, one of my mentors was working at Procter & Gamble. So again, somebody who I could see, who was very in the science field, and so that was my inspiration. I didn't really know I was going to find my way into tech until after my PhD.
Wow. Yeah. And we don't realize how important it is to visualize someone who looks like you in a field that you would aspire to be in. And for you, Hilda, what was your experience like coming into STEM?
Yeah, so for me, actually, how I got into computer science was through my mom. Yeah. So I've always been good in maths, especially in primary school, and then when I went into high school, I was doing very well in sciences. But when I was finishing high school, I actually wanted to get into accounting because it's full of numbers, calculators, and numbers have always fascinated me. But my mom took me for a diploma course as I was waiting to join campus to do management information systems at Strathmore. And out of that, I was like, wow, my mind has always been so curious. I was like, okay, there's something called computer science. There's something coming up in the market called information technology. There's computers that can do things, that can think. I was like, how can a machine, a box, actually think? So that is how I ended up applying for computer science in campus.
Wow. Yeah. And Hilda's just mentioned how she was really good in math and science coming up in school, but there's been this debate on the performance of girls in primary school when it comes to math and science over the last, 2 decades now. Why is that? And is it that most girls shy away because you feel, oh, well, the boys tend to gravitate to that and do well there, or are they just not being exposed enough to such subjects?
Yeah, I would pick an example for let me use an university as an example, and I'll give you a bit of statistic. For example, I have taught programming in quite a number of classes, and you find that the ratio of girls to boys in the class, it's always maybe 25% girls to the rest boys, and this is more or less in most universities. I've observed this. And on speaking to the girls, because I work with them, they mention a number of things. One is the lack of role models. So if you go to academia, for example, you'll find that women who have PhDs or who are professors in STEM or computer science, they're almost, you know, either 1 or 2 in the department or none in some universities. So the girls don't have role models to look up to. So at this level of university, that's one thing that students, the female students actually cite a lot. The second is the usual stereotypes, you know, that computer science is difficult or STEM is difficult, so we just need, you know, the demystifying that, because it is a stereotype by any standard. And so that the lack of mentorship has been something that has been said over and over again by the students that I interact with. They don't have female role models in order to say, you know, I want to be like those 5 ladies in the department, so I'm going to study computer science. Yeah.
And Charity, I mean, Chow has mentioned the whole issue of the lack of women mentors in STEM. That is something that exists, but then the other deterrents could be myths, things that don't, you know. So what keeps women away, or girls away from this field?
I think it has a lot to do with how we socialize people and things. If you look at kids who are in primary school, unless we socialize them that you can be a doctor, you can be an engineer, you can be a computer scientist, they'll never know, right? If we socialize them that certain careers are for certain genders, then that's how they grow up thinking. I don't think there's any difference in abilities, in interest when it comes to children. I think it's really how their teachers socialize them, it's how their parents socialize them, it's the opportunities that we give to them. So, you know, I was talking to one of my, younger friends, and she was asking about why she wanted to find out what she could do in the airline industry. And the question was, I don't want to be a pilot because, I don't like the way they dress. They dress like men, right? It's very simple things that start to socialize girls and boys growing up about what a career is and is not. So my belief is, if we start to socialize them to understand that you can do all of these things and you don't have to be a different person for you to become an engineer, if you want to become a computer scientist, you can still enjoy girly things. You can, you can be yourself and you can bring your whole self to work. And I think it starts to break some of those myths that make it feel like a contradiction to become a scientist and be female, for example.
That reminds me of a hashtag that I think 2 or 1 year ago of I look like a programmer, and it was trending. Where moms and people who have really do very what we consider feminine roles. They're actually industry experts. They're software engineers, and it was demystifying that programmers look nerdy and they don't look feminine, and people are taking really cool photos in and really just I look like a programmer. It was really cool.
I mean, and so to speak to that, because we just had the film Hidden Figures, which showed women being women and feminine, wearing their dresses, and that was the time of the 60s where women really were women, and they were not still kind of fazed by the fact that they couldn't do their work because I was wearing a dress or a skirt. But speak to the importance of women bringing their whole selves to the workspace, even though you're doing quite technical and analytical work.
I think for you to be successful in any field, be it in STEM or whatever profession you're in, you have to come as yourself. You have to be yourself, and you have to embrace yourself. And if you're female, you have to embrace yourself in how you dress. Embrace being feminine. because what really matters is what is in your head. And also something that could help demystify some of these myths that you're saying, that STEM is mainly for male or the boy child and not for the female gender, is lack of representation. Because there's a common saying that's hitting the market that it's difficult to be what you can't see. So if you can see, for example, for the company that I work in, IBM, if you can see a chair lady, you can see the president and the CEO being female and getting on stage dressed in a feminine manner, everything done, nails done, makeup done, accessories done, and she's still able to dialogue with other leaders in the industry, then it actually makes you see that being feminine is not an obstacle. It actually, you embrace yourself and you can be anything that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Chao, when it comes to trying to bridge that gap, the gender gap in STEM, because, okay, we've made some strides here in Kenya when it comes to gender parity. It's not translating, though, when it comes to a field like STEM. Women still very underrepresented in the workforce. Why is that? I mean, we've talked about some of the contributing factors, but the translation of women from campus who are in the field studying and then now being effective in the workplace.
Last year, I did a small workshop on female researchers who are envisioning a career in academia and research, and that's one of the conversations we had. And one of the biggest, the usual challenges are there, you know, lack of funding, lack of wanting. You finished undergrad, you want to pursue that master's, that PhD, but there's, you know, the information to actually, how do you get there? What are the opportunities for that? And it doesn't help that we haven't exactly painted a good picture for academia in Kenya. That's we are currently in a lecturer's strike as we speak. So it's just, there are certain things that, now speaking from an academic perspective, do not exactly encourage more people to come in. So those are the general challenges, but we also have now the specific challenge to girls, to ladies rather, where they get the usual societal responsibilities. So family matters come up, children and other responsibilities. So one of the things, for example, that Makerere have done, or the chair lady there, who is a lady, was telling me that they have done a very good job in trying to create even funding opportunities that support women who have children. So for example, you can go to your PhD class, but your funding allows you to hire a nanny so that you get more time to study and also take care of your family. So perhaps as we move towards a knowledge-based economy and we're thinking about research, one of the things to consider is how do we support women who want to advance their studies in such a way that they can still have the responsibilities that they want to cater for and also advance themselves. So in that way we may be able to see more people, more women in academia, more women in STEM roles.
Absolutely. And on that note, let's take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. We'll be speaking to these beautiful ladies to find out what it is they actually do and how they got to where they are in STEM. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. We're talking women in STEM. And I'm sure people are watching and very curious. They're seeing these grand titles, you know, doctor. These are not honorary doctorates, by the way. They've earned them. So before we get into what they do exactly, we want to know the journey of what it takes to actually get to where you are. Beyond being good in math and science, what does it actually take? And I'll begin with you, Chao.
Perseverance, lots of it, and passion, because without the drive to, you know, this is something I want for me, not for other people. This is something I want for me. That is what keeps you going to, you know, to do any innovation, to launch any kind of programs, to go all the way to PhD. Perseverance and passion. Those are the key words that I will say have kept me going until where I am today.
But how about you, Charity?
I think it's a lot of what Chao has talked about. I would also say you need to have a reason why you're doing what you're doing. So you need to have something that drives you. And for me, it's the desire to solve problems that are important in the society I live in. So I think that passion for it drives you to deal with, challenges or to have to put in extra time more than, other people would be able to or would want to, because you see something that is important for you and it's personal. Yeah, it can't just be the title.
Yeah, exactly. We should be talking about those titles. Which, people are all about titles here in Kenya, as long as a paragraph, but you're not doing anything. These women are doing something. But you, Hilda?
Yeah, I think for me, just to add on to what these powerful women have said, is a lot of self-discipline. Yeah. Because then it helps you to be in sync with what it is that you actually want to do and where you need to go from where you are. Then a strong support system. And that is built starting from home. Having people who support you, because you need that emotional support, but you also need the kind of support like mentorship. You need to reach out to people who've gone before you and see how they've done it. Then they can tell you. And you also need to give back. So it's two-way. You're reaching out to somebody who's done it before you, and you're also looking at people in high school, people in campus. Like there's this mentorship program that's being started by the Ministry of ICT, which is called the Presidential Digital Talent Program. And I'm a part of it, and a lot of IBMers are a part of it. And it just helps to see how people coming straight from campus, they are a bit lost, even though you might assume they would know what to do in the workplace, but just being there to tell them and to learn from the mistakes that you made, and to also learn from your experiences helps them to ride in the shoulders of giants. Then we're able to leapfrog our society. So support system, reaching out and also giving back.
So let's talk about opportunities. I'm reading your title here, Hilda. Data Science and Business Analytics Technical Specialist. What is that exactly? For anyone who's just hearing that.
So data science, we're living in an era of data.
Yeah.
So we're constantly sending WhatsApp messages, we have Facebook accounts, we have Instagram, and even in the corporate environment, there are a lot of systems. So all these systems are harboring data. So we need to get insights out of that data. And we need to, so it's becoming a science. So getting insights out of data is what is called data science. And helping businesses get insights out of that data is business analytics, so that they can be able to know which areas do we need to improve revenue in, which areas do we need, which customers are likely to leave our business, and what can we do, how can we run our marketing events in a smarter way. So that is data science and business analytics.
Wow. And Charity, for you, we could ask what your title means, which I'll read really quickly. Research Scientist at IBM Research Lab Africa, which we actually got a sense of what that looks like. Take a look at this.
So many people might wonder what a research scientist like myself does on a day-to-day basis. I would summarize it as problem solving. We see problems in the world. We ideate or come up with ideas about how to solve them. We test to see if our ideas address the problems that we have identified. And then if they work, we continue and roll them out. If they don't work, then we go back and test more ideas. So we really start by identifying problems in the environments that we're in. For example, in Kenya, access to credit is a challenge, especially for people who are involved in very, very small businesses. And we look at that as a problem and then try to understand it from a scientific perspective. So once we have understood what has already been done, and we call that a literature review, then we'll sit as a team to brainstorm and put our ideas together about what we think can be done to address the problem we have identified. And usually you want to come up with a hypothesis about the problem. So then what we'd be looking at in our solutioning or ideation would be to say, how do we make this data available? Why isn't it available? Things like that. And the outcome of that is then you come up with maybe a technology solution, a software that might help to collect the financial history data that we're looking for. We might say, okay, it's not just enough to collect, you must make it available to the financial institution in a way that makes sense. So that's where we'll build a software and then utilize some of our artificial intelligence tools to create a risk profile that you can give to a financial institution. So now, once we do that, we have now developed a solution that we can actually take out and experiment with to see if it actually helps address the problem we pointed out in the first place. You create solutions that make sense for who you're targeting. And then you also, spend a lot of time experimenting so that you can make sure that your solution makes sense. So we work a lot in teams, and we work a lot with people who have expertise in very specific areas. So whether we're looking at, blockchain, we're looking at artificial intelligence, people who can build great software solutions. We work in that kind of a team so that we get people who can contribute in all of those areas so that we have one solution that makes sense.
All right, so we've seen at least a day in your life, Charity, but what other opportunities are yielded out of being in this field? Beyond having the title, beyond being and working for a great company like IBM,
yes.
What other opportunities are there?
So let me start by saying it's the coolest thing to be in research. I know there's a lot of mystery around what it means, but I think about it as being given an opportunity to imagine what the future could be. And then you have lots and lots of tools around you that enable you to do that. So at IBM Research, basically what we do is to understand how technology is going to shape Africa, how technology specifically is going to shape the ways in which we do business today. So I think about it as really being given the world in your hands for you to define what problems you're going to solve. And in the space we work in, there's lots of problems, right? So I work specifically in the public sector, so we think about how to drive service delivery that's efficient and effective in government. So how do we support government to do that? We help them by working with them to digitize, to automate workflows, to understand from the perspective of businesses, what do they want? How do we create a business environment for Kenyans that works? And how does technology help with that? So as Hilda was talking about, it's thinking about data that you can start to record so that you can analyze it and provide as decision support.
Wow.
So I'm part of the blockchain and AI or distributed ledgers task force that was recently appointed by the Minister of ICT.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And our role is really to think about these emerging technologies that are changing the way our world is today. So artificial intelligence, blockchain, other emerging technologies, and asking ourselves as Kenyans, how do we take advantage of those technologies? So companies like IBM are building or defining how those technologies are going to be done, but also as Kenyans to think about how should the government respond to that? Is there regulations that will enable? Should we be thinking about how to support skills in that field? How do we use them to leapfrog our country?
Yeah. Wow, I mean, I'm hearing you talking about using AI, and I'm just wondering, what am I doing with my life? But, Dr. Chao, you're in the classroom, and you're helping to build this next crop of women and men coming into STEM. But what does your daily kind of encounter entail?
So it is, first we have a lot of work to do in terms of really adequately educating students, especially for 21st century skills like problem solving, like critical thinking. It is not enough to simply produce computer scientists. It is, we need to do more of, can they think logically? Can they think outside the box? And I like what Charity said regarding solving problems, because fortunately for us, we live in sub-Saharan Africa, which has a myriad of problems, but those are opportunities. And so do we teach students to solve those problems? So that would be the challenge that I put out there. And so that's really my style of teaching, and that's why I'm the program lead for Kamilimu, which is a mentorship program for computer science students. We currently have students from 12 universities in Kenya as part of the program. And the reason for this, the fundamental reason why this mentorship program was started, was to fill the gap complement what they learn in the classroom and prepare them better for the global industry, not just local industry.
Wow.
And that's our vision, to be a program that prepares students to be globally competitive. And by doing so, we inculcate not only computer science skills, because they learn that in the classroom. Okay, so you have those skills. How do you use that to solve problems? How do you become innovative? How do you prepare yourself for the industry? How do you develop self-confidence? And I like the fact that one of the things we talk about in science is we know how to write science, but can we communicate it? And so one of the things we need to also teach students, which we do at Kamilimu, is communicating their science.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing. A more holistic approach.
Just to add on to that, I think we have to realize that skills cannot just be the premise of academia. There has to be lots and lots of things that the private sector also comes in to supplement, particularly in IT, because there's so much that's changing so quickly. So I like that, you know, we have lots and lots of programs by companies like ours and others to be able to ensure that people are learning skills. So, you know, for IBM, we have a skills initiative that goes through, you know, about more than 10 countries in the continent, and the goal is just ensure that you're teaching these additional skills as they come up, because you know, I don't know how many schools in Kenya have a curriculum on blockchain, for example, right? But I think private sector has to take that initial step to start to already build those skills, even as they find their way to academia, to a place where we can actually have those meaningful partnerships.
Absolutely, absolutely. Perfect segue into a break. We'll be talking about, as you mentioned, charity. It's a very dynamic field. It changes constantly, and challenges, of course, come with that. We'll be talking about that after the break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. We're still on Women in STEM. Let's talk about challenges. It's not easy being able to kind of keep up what you do, and in a field where there are not that many women. And even in terms of support, where do you draw that from? Dr. Chow, let's begin with you in terms of, well, you'll be speaking more in academia.
Yes.
And some of the challenges that you face there, but what do you experience?
So the first challenge is the one for not having enough support system from women in academia, because there's really few of us. And so that has been, is actually a continuous challenge that I experienced personally. It's interesting you asked us, because when I was once asked, who are your role models? And I had to sit down and think and say, actually, my role models are 2 men and 1 woman. And that, I don't know, that made me like think, because, you know, some of them are, you know, my professors from PhD, and they're both male. And I had to think, is it because I haven't really reached out to women in STEM, in academia, or we just don't have a stronger support system because we are so few of us? So that for me has been a big challenge, getting women who are in academia, who are in computer scientists and doing this. And, you know, through the mentorship, I've created now new networks, and that's helping with that. So that's the first challenge. The second one is stereotypes. And that is something which we have to we continuously deal with. And unfortunately, sometimes it also comes from other women, where we have situations like a woman has actually asked me, so you have a PhD in computer science, and she was really shocked. And the next phrase she said after that is, but where will you get a man?
Can we just take a commercial break on that one and come back? But my goodness, wow.
Yeah, and you get that what's said, you know, directly to your face or not, but that's something that is unfortunately very common. And you kind of you grow a thick skin, and it ceases to bother you, but it is there. And the third thing is just getting, because also, like she said, one of the things we have to do is give back. And so continually, for me, getting female students who are really enthusiastic about the field, and in order to give back and showing them the way, that is, for me, is part of the things I do a lot, and what Kamilimu does. So sometimes it's a challenge, because you have two female students to 10, yet you'd wish to see 5 or even more. Yeah. So getting more female students on board is something that I'm continually working on. But yeah, I'll cite those as some of the obvious challenges that we experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
How about you, Charity?
So I actually go back and forth around part of what you were discussing about representation. I think representation is a challenge in many places, but it's also sometimes a reflection of representation in a larger scale in STEM. I think there's some statistics that say only 20% of our university kids are going into STEM related fields. So if 20% are going into that, then much fewer women. So then in the spaces I find myself, it's many times I'm the only female, or there's just a few. IBM, I think, is a bit different than most companies. We actually have higher than average numbers for women. And so I think for me, it's not even so much challenge with representation internally. I think it's external views, which I think for me, the support system has been great internally in just being able to say, it's not that you're male or female that matters, is that you're able to deliver. And I think when you get that level of support internally, then it makes a big difference. I think she also talked about having a female CEO. I think that just settles most of those discussions internally in the company. And so for me internally, I'm very, very excited to be able to work in this space where being inclusive, being female it's normal. Where I think I've sort of struggled is in the kinds of stereotypes that people look at, or when you go into a meeting, they look at, say, oh, Dr. Charity is coming, and then they sort of wait and you show up and they're like, no, we're waiting for her. So things like that. Exactly. But I actually look at them as opportunities to demystify and to break some of those stereotypes, because when you show up and they're like, oh, it's you, okay. So there's a confusion, you look really young, this, that, the other, but I think those are important things that need to happen, I feel like, so that we can start to get to a normal place where we don't have images about what a PhD should look like, or what a female doctor should look like, etc. And people should just, you're taken for the work that you do. And I'm learning that after that first meeting, things usually go pretty
pretty well after that.
So
I'm curious, Hilda, because I was reading somewhere where they found a lot of women in STEM find the challenge of not being given opportunities or being excluded from conferences to showcase their science and what their innovations, pretty much. And I'm not sure if that's something that you've experienced or seen in the field generally. And I guess also points to the fact that we see less and less tech pioneers like Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak, men who are driving. Because when you think of women in STEM, a lot of times the perception is it's support staff. Right, and not the ones who are driving the agenda when it comes to STEM issues. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think from my experience, and especially probably working for a good employer, I find IBM to be very inclusive in terms of diversity, in terms of women. It doesn't really matter. You're not hired based on your gender or based on your age. It's purely based on your experience. And that is one of the things that I really like about my experience at IBM. If I look at some of the, maybe former other places of work, we need to do a lot more. We need to put systems that support women, especially as they go through the different phases at workplace, like putting things like creches in place. Like, I'm a young mother, so when you go through some of these experiences, then that's when you actually learn you have to code, but at the same time you have a small baby to take care of, and you want such systems in place. So these are some of the things that we need to put in place, and we need to work with the government to put such policies in place to support women and to support our younger sisters who are coming out of school, because these are some of the challenges that they will face. So if you work for a good employer, you'll find such things already in place. You can take maternity leave and you'll come back and you'll still find your job intact. So those are some of the policies that we need to put in place to continue empowering our girls and women.
Let's just wrap up with you, Charity, in terms of why it's important to have women in STEM beyond just the quota of having women there. Why is it critical to have them in that space?
One, I think the problems that we face today as a country, as a continent, a lot of them have to do with STEM. So we cannot have solutions that affect both men and women only addressed by half of our agenda. So it means we are really dedicating only 50% of our population to address some of the most critical challenges that we have. So I think we have to make sure we have 100% of us who can dedicate our intellect, our resources, etc. The second thing I think is, if we're going to be able to take advantage of the things that are transforming our world today, you know, we're talking about blockchain becoming as significant as internet. We're talking about artificial intelligence completely transforming the way in which we do work. We cannot be just consumers. I think I said this before. We have to start co-creating. We have to be a part of the people who create solutions, make businesses, improve productivity for the world. That means we have to develop the STEM skills that are required for that by both men and women. Yeah. So representation there really matters. The third part, I think it's just fun. It's extremely interesting to be in. So for me, that's a reason for women to be able to be in those fields, so that they define the things that are going to affect them. So if I want to be in fashion, I want somebody who sort of understands fashion to use technology to drive what fashion is going to look like in the next 20 years. So that's for women who are interested in fashion and science to participate.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Hilda, Charity, and Chow, for your time and insights, and hopefully encouragement to a lot of young women watching that you can do this. This is a field that you can succeed in, not just get into, but succeed in. And I hope I see a lot more young ladies joining these beautiful women and helping to change the world, because that's what it's all about. It is to create change in the societies that we live in. And that does it for Victoria's Lounge. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you keep the conversation going on social media, #Victoria's Lounge. Thank you so much to Zeneria Portico for hosting us. Let's do this again next week. But before we wrap up, we have a special surprise from Crown Paints. Take a look at this.
Victoria's Lounge in association with Crown Paints. If you like it, crown it.
Hello, my name is Shrinal Patel. I work for Crown Paints as the head interior designer and soon to be home decorator manager for Crown Paints. I've studied in Australia for interior design and architecture. So let's have a look at my house and what I've done and why I've done it. Welcome to my home. This is my entry point using Feng Shui and color in mind with psychology. I have a red entrance wall which is very welcoming. It's supposed to be something that entices you, and it's supposed to bring good luck as well. On this other side, I've got the 5 Buddhas with the 5 elements, and I've got it in grayscale, which brings in this factor where it's not competing with the red that I have on the opposite wall. Moving in further into my corridor, I have this Metallica wall done by Crown Paints. It's in white and gold. It's the Metallica canvas effect. And I've got the Lord Ganesha, which is the Hindu god for good luck and prosperity. This is all painted with Crown Paints silk vinyl matte paints. Walking in further, I have this blue wall, which is the new Crown Italia Due wall. It is the Lucca Blue. Moving further, the house has a very open space plan, so we decided to focus on the ceiling in this part of the living room, where we've used the Crown Metallica Gold on the ceiling as a highlight, and we've bordered it with the Sultan Blue and matte. Prefer matte finishes for the ceilings because they don't have any sheen or reflection, and therefore when your lights are on, you don't have a lot of light reflecting out onto your spaces. So here we have our master bedroom, where our theme is all elephants. We have a love for elephants and a passion for them. In fact, we've adopted quite a few of them with the David Sheldrake. So we've gone quite simple and decided to go for a mural with elephants, where the elephants are in a silhouette. We've used silk paints again from Crown Paints. Crown Paints has around 3,600 shades and over for you to choose from. We've only used a few of them here to achieve this effect. We've also got side tables and drawers, which we have created, redesigned and refurbished using Crown Paints. I'll take you now somewhere where I have sort of done a few of the shades from the 3,600 available choices. So you can see I have a lot of color choices available here. These are all from the Crown shade card, the ambient shade card. The good thing about this is I know what colors I've done. So if somebody wants to see that, for example, what is carriage red going to look like, or what is chartreuse going to look like, or orange torch, I can bring them here and they can see that when it's applied and light hits this point, this is what it looks like. So if you have any further queries, or you would like some assistance in us having to give you examples of what you can do with your space, how to bring color into your life, into your home, you can call us on the numbers that are running down below on your screen and make an appointment, and we will have somebody visit you and advise you on the same.
Victoria's Lounge, in association with Crown Paints, celebrating 60 years of being the colors of Kenya.